Music Educator live stream. My name is Bill Stevens. I'll be your host today, and I'm super excited. I have a wonderful gentleman, a music professional, and in today's live stream, we will be interviewing Mr. Paul Scanling. And Mr. Scanling is currently the music director of the Atlanta Concert Band and is in his 28th year in the classroom. He holds degrees from Florida State University and Georgia State University. His primary instrument is the flute and has marched DCI for 7 years. In this interview, Mr. Scanling will be discussing the importance of instrumental fundamentals. So I'm super excited. I know you music educators and music students out there can definitely get a lot out of this interview. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Paul Scanley. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, you're in the Atlanta area. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
And can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm a Georgia native. I've been involved in music since I was about 5 when I sat down at the piano for the first time. Started playing flute when I was 7, joined the band, and have been in the band ever since. I think my first band concert was in 1983. So been doing this for a long time in one form or another. As you mentioned, this is my 28th year in the classroom. I've taught in public and private schools, but mostly private schools. I've taught everything from 4th grade through college, and I currently teach at Dominion Christian School out in West Cobb, and it's a 6 through 12 school where I'm the band director, which means that if a kid gets to high school and doesn't know how to do something, it's my fault. I didn't teach him how to do it. I kind of like having that responsibility.
You're your own feeder there.
Yes.
Cool.
I get to do lots of things, though. I as you mentioned, I'm the music director of the Atlanta Concert Band, community band, adult community band. We celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. I'm also on the board of an organization called Chamber Cartel. We do contemporary chamber music, commission new works, all the really weird stuff, electronics and all sorts of strange things. Gigging musician, don't do a lot of that right now, but I have done some of that in the past. Really enjoy getting chances to play.
Very nice, very nice. And well, I'd like to kind of get into it if that's okay, because your topic, the whole instrumental fundamentals concept, is so important for directors all over the place and students. And we also have the assessment and contest and festival, whatever you call it, wherever you are around the country. This is kind of a big deal for us and for our students. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, so as you mentioned, coming from a drum corps background, if you're playing brass instrument and drum corps, you're doing a lot of fundamentals, lip slurs and articulations and all that stuff. It's a lot of basic brass training. I showed up to the Spirit of Atlanta in November of 1990 as a flute player. I knew how to buzz mouthpiece, and they taught me a lot. It helped that I didn't have any bad habits. I think that was a big plus for me at the time. Almost a clean slate there. And so I learned a lot with fundamentals there. My first teaching job was in Baker County, Florida, and I had freshmen that would show up and they knew the scale, concert B flat.
Yeah.
So I said, first day of band camp, all right, let's learn a new scale. And they thought, wait, there are other scales? I didn't know that. Yeah, there are lots of them. Everything's not going to be in B flat. You're going to have to learn other keys. But it blew my mind that I would ask students, how many beats are in that measure 4/4 time, and they didn't know what the time signature meant, or how many flats are in the key signature, or how many counts does that note last, or just basic simple stuff. I've worked with professionals most of my adult life, and they have to know those things. I think, well, they learned it somewhere. Somebody somewhere, some teacher sat down and said, okay, it's 4/4 time. There's 4 beats in a bar, and quarter note gets the beat. Here we go, count 4. So it was very frustrating to me to teach middle school skills to high school students with the high school performance pressure of there's a football game on Friday night and you got to take them to LGP. And I was in Florida. There are standards for the size of the school determines the minimum grade level you got to play. So the school I was at had to play grade 4 music. And if I have students showing up in 9th grade that only know the scale, grade 4 music is way beyond them. So I spent a lot of time doing a lot of things that I didn't think were very educationally sound just to get them ready to play grade 4 music. So I went back to school and went to grad school, got a Master of Music Education from Georgia State University. And I've spent most of my career since then teaching fundamentals at the middle school level, working with students and getting them to the point where I can put a piece of music in front of them. And as long as it's developmentally appropriate, they know what to do, and then we can make music rather than just know, okay, let's learn that rhythm, okay, let's learn that note. I didn't like doing that. This past week I was only there at school 3 days a week because of our state convention. And so with all my classes, we just sight read. I'd say eighth graders, all right, here's a grade 2 piece of music, let's play it. And within 20 minutes, they can play through it. I was like, okay, they know what all these notes, rhythms, symbols, and terms mean. I must be doing something right. It may not be the most fascinating piece of music in the history of the world, but the students are now achieving something, and you can look on their faces and say, oh, I understand. I like this. Okay, this is good. All right. Okay, kids, now next week, time to step it up. We're going to get a little better.
Well, that's awesome. Now, I noticed you also mentioned the whole if your grade, like the number of kids in the school, you're expected to play a certain grade level. Is that, I think my very first year, because I taught in Louisiana 1 year, and then I taught in Colorado and Virginia, and I think Louisiana was the same way. Why do they do that based upon your population rather than the success, or, what your ensembles really can do at the level they can be? Or do you know?
Well, the way it was explained to me was that they think a school of a certain size ought to have a certain number of students in the band and ought to be able to play to a certain level. And that never made any sense to me. I was born and raised in Georgia, so when I started working in Florida, that was totally foreign concept to me. Just because we have only 1,200 students in the school, I don't understand why we can't play whatever we're capable of playing. And I didn't think it was very educationally sound, because I know there are schools in South Florida that are huge, 4,000 students. Well, they have to play grade 6 material. Well, what if that's not good for them? Sorry, there are 3,000 students. You got to play grade 6 material. And I never thought that was a good idea. I didn't teach in Florida for very long. Came back to Georgia, where you can play whatever is developmentally appropriate for your students. And there have been several times I have taken it down a notch. We could probably play grade 6, but I think we'd have a better educational experience if it was grade 5. I tell students all the time, I'm not in show business. I'm in the education business. Yeah. And my job is not to produce a concert. My job is to teach you so that you can play a concert. I have some colleagues that I won't name that are they want to go to state convention and say, yes, my band played grade 6 and we got superior ratings and we we played the Persichetti, we played the Hindemith, and we could. I mean, that's great and all, but my kids had a great experience and learned it, and they're going to be lifelong musicians. Even if they're not playing, they're going to support the arts. They're going to go to the symphony. They're going to like those. They're going to tell their kids, hey, you should play in band. I had a great experience. My son is a 6th grade beginning bassoon player right now. Okay. So, in fact, I went and bought him some new reeds this afternoon. So I'm starting to experience life as a band parent, which is going to be interesting. Yep. There's been some moments already where I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, not my place, not my band, not my place to correct that or say something, and just be dad, be supportive of my son, help him when I can, that kind of thing.
Well, that's kind of nice to hear that there's other people that feel that way, because if you have say you have a, for lack of a better way, a builder upper type program, you can't expect them to play a grade 6. I mean, that could be for all kinds of reasons. And I know for me, when I started, especially, I guess, bottom of the totem pole, that's kind of where things were when I was a young teacher. And in fact, as a young teacher, I wanted to say, hey, I could play at that level. And then realism basically hit me and said, hey, you got to get your fundamentals down. You got to get your kids' fundamentals down. And I got a slap in the face in my first assessment. Fortunately, I learned from that experience and did very well the next year. But
we all have moments like that. It's if you're teaching high school, you're at the mercy of the middle school. If you've got a great middle school program, your job is so much easier. If you've got a bad middle school program feeder, you pretty much can't do maybe some of the things that a high school ought to be doing.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of out of control. That was very frustrating for me. And I said, maybe I should go do that. And it turns out that I kind of like doing that. I have kids now at my current school that I taught them how to open the case and make the first sound. And now I've got 4 or 5 juniors that are playing grade 5 material and doing it well and got a great sound, and they go to honor bands and clinics and do all those things and have some of those experiences that we can't offer them at a really small school. But it's very satisfying to me as a teacher to say, I taught that kid how to open the case and put it together and make that first sound. And because of technology, I still have recordings of their first sounds. I always record the band's first note, and then I play it for the parents at the Christmas concert. This is what your kid sounded like 4 months ago. Here's what your kid sounded like today. I need you to recognize the work that they're putting in.
Oh, that's
It's
nice.
not just, we're not just playing hot cross buns here. You know, we're doing some things, and I want you to recognize that. They recognize it because I play that recording for them a couple times a year, and even after they get into high school. Oh, let's go back and find that file from you when you were in sixth grade, and do not. We use smart music in our program, so I do a lot of recording.
Oh, good.
They get a lot of instant feedback, and those are files. I can save those files on my laptop, and they're there, and I can say, okay, let's go find this kid's trumpet line 42 out of the blue book and listen to what you sounded like 4 or 5 years ago and hear what you sound like now and recognize the work you put in and the progress you've made.
So you mentioned you use smart music. Do you find that to be a good assist? Is that the right way? Instructional technology to use with your students?
I use it. So I'm fortunate that I have small classes. My largest class is 19 in it. Okay. I've got speakers. It's a fairly small room. 19 almost fills it up. But I have speakers all the way around the room. So I can turn on a metronome. I can turn on a pitch reference. I can have them play, or I can have the computer play something for them so that they can hear examples of things. And then they can play along. So my students very rarely play without a metronome and a pitch reference. So they know what it's supposed to sound like together. And after 6th grade, probably 7th grade, in their second year, we will have them play things with them where it'll tick, 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 and then play it, but there's no metronome. So they got to listen to the computer playing the trumpet part or whatever and play it together. And once they get more advanced, we'll have, okay, I've got 10 8th graders. Maybe I don't have a trombone. The computer's going to play the trombone part. Yep. How does your flute part fit with the trombone part? You're going to listen to it. You're going to match that. You're going to, oh, that measure we're together. That measure they're playing while I'm resting. Those sorts of things. And it forces them to hear and listen because I'm not standing up there clicking a stick or snapping my fingers or anything like that. I used to snap my fingers all the time, and I have really dry skin, and they would crack and bleed. So my wife is like, oh, you got a Band-Aid on your finger. Stop snapping your fingers. Yes, I know. So, yeah, I use that smart music to make them get out of the page and listen to each other and understand the relationship of the parts. And as they go from grade 1 to grade 2 to grade 3, they start to understand I have a role here. It's not all together. You know, because we spend most of 6th grade, they're playing in unison. Yep. The trombone and the flute are playing the exact same thing. There's no difference. There might be 2 parts or 3 parts on a concert, in a piece on a concert, but it's never really that complicated. By the time you get in grade 3, there are 9 or 10 parts. And so you need to understand your role. Well, we start with developing them to listen to the other parts. And when there are 9 or 10 parts, that's not a big deal.
Okay. All right. Now, coming back to the whole fundamentals side, do you have like a fundamentals routine that you do, or some kind of warm up that you particularly do, or do you find something more? I don't know. You prioritize certain activities more than others. Can you tell me?
We start every day with long tones. Yeah, so we start with long tones. Brass players buzz on their mouthpiece, something low and slow. Those are the words I use. Buzz as low as you can, buzz as loud as you can. Do those kinds of things. With like percussionists, like if the brass and woodwind is going to hold a note for 8 counts, percussion, I pick a very simple rudiment. I've got a rudiments poster on my board, and I'll go up and I say, hey, we're doing number 1. Here's paradiddle. And I want you to play it as quarter notes. Paradiddle. Anybody can do that, right? Okay, and they get a little comfortable with that. All right, now just twice as fast. Paradiddle, paradiddle. This past week, I have some of my musicians that are doing that as 16th notes. Paradiddle, 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 paradiddle. So while the brass and woodwinds are playing a long 8-count note, and we'll take that up and we'll break it into 8 quarter notes, and then eventually 8th notes and triplets, and so on and so on, as they develop their articulation skills, maintaining that tone quality. We do that at the beginning of every class every day. About 4 or 5 years ago, I made a conscious effort to say, I don't care what we're doing, we're going to start with long tones, and we're going to talk about tone so that they understand the sound they're supposed to make.
Yeah.
Which means that now when I hand them a piece of music, they still sound like themselves. Even if they're playing wrong notes or wrong rhythms or whatever, they still have that good sound. And so we can get things lined up and go, no, that's an F sharp. Just those basic things you need to remind a 12-year-old about, but they still do it with a good sound because they don't know how to play without that good sound, because I've set that standard and I hold them to that standard, and they're reminded of it every day when they walk in the classroom.
Good.
That fundamental is, I think, so important, because you can play a wrong note every now and then and it's not a big deal. But if you play an entire piece with bad tone, nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
Wrong
I mean,
note
if it's
every
a
day.
bad sound, it's a bad sound.
Yeah. So a wrong note, they're middle school, they're going to miss a note. It's fine. We can fix the wrong notes. But if you're playing it with a bad sound, it's like, we've all been to middle school band concerts where we're like, how can you, stop that.
Excuse me. So, you're doing these now. Do you do the same kind of warm-ups with your older students? Because you go all the way to 12th grade, right?
Yes.
When does that start to change for you, or does it change?
Well, the basic fundamentals don't change. Now, yes, we add things to it. For instance, we use Standard of Excellence for our middle school, and they all have the lines called warm up, and some of them aren't really warm ups. Like the first one in the blue book, the second book starts all the brass, like starts a trumpet on third space C. It's like, that's not a warm up note for a seventh grader. You need something earlier, something lower for that. But so they're doing lip slurs in quarter notes and eighth notes, and so with the high school, the Foundations for Superior Performance. And I have never gotten all the way through that book because there's so much good stuff in it.
There is.
And you can mix and match so that it's not the same one every single day. Like, brass, we're doing set 1, option 1, but woodwind's on set 1, option 4, and percussion, turn to page 9, and we're going to do set 3, option 1, because they're doing something, and they all fit together and they all work. And so I can say, okay, I got percussion and they need to work on this rudiment, or I got flutes and they need to play this scale, so let's do that scale in the warm-up and all those things. And we can spend all year going through that book and working those fundamentals. And they know when they're about to get a piece of music a couple weeks before, okay, this piece of music we're going to have you to play in C major, so we're going to do warm-ups in C major. We're going to play that scale in whole notes. We're going to do long tones on that C, so that the trumpets learn how to first and third and kick that valve, the third valve slide out, so that they understand what it sounds like, and that the fourth line D is going to be flat. So how you going to adjust that? What are you going to listen to adjust that? Those things, so that they've got those fundamentals. So when I hand them a piece that's in C major, they're like, okay, I got this. I know what needs to happen to make it sound good, even the first time that we read it. Those fundamentals. I do those fundamentals with the community band, not nearly as much because I don't get even remotely as much rehearsal time. But we play those long tones. We do those articulations. Last summer we played American Salute. So as part of our warm up, we were da 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 dun da dun da 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 dun da dun da da da. We talked about articulation and we did it slow and we sped it up. And it's like, okay, now we're here. We got to balance the chord and all that stuff. It's not really. Got some dissonance in there, but we get the articulation is what makes or breaks it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you're it's just gibberish, and we need clarity, and that's an articulation. It's not a note issue. The notes are not that difficult. It's an articulation. I've heard bands play that, and it's like that. Those first 3 or 4 measures are just blah, 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 blah. Okay. Clean up the articulation. Do that in your warm up fundamentals every single day, and they'll get it.
Yeah. I know some people really view the articulation as a maturity. I guess a musician maturity thing too. Your more mature musicians will typically have better articulations than your younger ones. So,
but only if you're teaching them that from the beginning.
That's true.
So I start with, one of the things I do with my beginners is whatever line we're going to play, I'll find a low note in the exercise. I play the last note. Maybe it's a low concert B flat, and we'll play it as 8 count note. But then we'll play it as 8 quarter notes, and I'll tell them, the air never stops. The air does the same thing whether you're holding it for 8 counts and tonguing once, or holding it for 8 counts and tonguing 8 times. The air does the same thing. Your tongue just barely touches the reed or the roof of your mouth, depending on who you are, but it doesn't affect the tone quality, and there's no gap in the sound. Keep the air moving. And so they learn very quickly to listen for that. And early on, I'm like, play that, do that, go that. My students learn really quickly. You're going to play by yourself in front of everybody, and you're going to make a mistake, and it's okay. And if a kid laughs at you, I'm going to stomp on that kid. So everybody needs to feel safe. Yeah. That okay, I played a wrong note. Okay, so what? I played a wrong note. Let's fix it. Second valve. Got it. Good. So keeping that air moving. And so even at the beginning level, they're not doing complicated. They're not playing American Salute, but it's the same fundamental. And American Salute's not going to happen unless playing 8 quarter notes at a slow tempo with great tone happens. There's got to be a step one before they can be step
Mm-hmm.
25 or whatever. You got to start with that. So those high school students are not doing things fundamentally correct unless they were beginning to do them fundamentally correct earlier in their band career, right from the beginning.
So what happens if how do you keep your kids motivated to do the fundamentals, or to make them purposeful? I guess that would be the right way of saying it. Do you have any recommendations?
From the beginning, it's just, here's what we need to develop. I tell them, everything on the page is note, rhythm, symbols, and terms.
Okay.
My job is to teach you those. Your job is to do them. I say this all the time. My job is to teach. Your job is to learn. So I teach them. We get to the page. We turn the page. All right, here we go. Forte. All right, we define forte so that they know it. And so now when we see it on the page, I can say, see, it says forte. Did you play forte? Well, let's try it again. That's your job. As I'm doing those fundamentals, though, I'm making sure that I can take the fundamental that we're doing and apply it to something we're going to do later in that same class. So let's say clarinets going over the break, right? So the clarinets go down to low A, and then they put their thumb up, and then we do that in the warm up, and we talk about the air stream. We talk about how nothing changes except your thumb. I'll have clarinet players come up, and I'll turn the
setup,
the head joint, all the barrel, everything all around 180 degrees. I'll do the fingers, and I'll say, here, you play, and I'll just go boom, and it jumps up that 12th, and they're like, oh yeah, see, you didn't change anything here. You didn't blow faster air, you didn't squeeze, nothing. It's your thumb. Your thumb opens a hole, does the work. Clarinet does the work. You're not doing the work except for your thumb. And so they go, oh, it's air. Yeah, if you keep that air going up to the upper register is not difficult. Right? So that, and then I'll take it later in the class and say, okay, we're playing this piece. Clarinets, look at that measure. Where have you seen that before today? Oh, you saw that in the warm-up, right? Yeah.
There you go.
And so the kids are like, oh, okay, we're doing stuff in the warm-ups that we're going to apply right now, and it makes it so much easier. And as I tell them repeatedly, the more you work, the easier it gets, the more fun it gets, the more you want to work, the easier it gets, the more fun it gets. It's a cycle, and it's a self-feeding. It gets better and better and better and better.
So they can
and the complete opposite.
Yeah, they see and hear the growth of their playing.
Yes. They see and hear the growth, and they get to a concert and they have fun. And I'm like, that's the point. This is not something deep and profound. I want you to enjoy what we're doing. Well, that means you need to know what you're doing. I have kids, small private school, they all play sports. And I tell them, you play basketball? Are you any good at it? No. Do you like it? No. There's a connection there. Nope. There's some fundamentals you got to learn that makes it a little more fun. And then once it makes more fun, you're like, oh, I want to work hard. Oh, and then now it's more fun. And it feeds on itself. The opposite is true. If you don't know how to do something, it's not very much fun. And so you're not going to work on it, which means you're not going to get better, which means you're not going to have fun, which means you're not going to work. And I see those kids that don't make that connection, and you're come on, no. This is not rocket science. It's not rocket science. I tell them all the time, I'm not a rocket scientist. I was an AB student in high school, but I wasn't going to be an astronaut or anything. So, this is band. Play what's on the page. Listen to each other, and it could be fun. I have some advantages in that I take advantage. Well, let's say it's not an advantage. I take advantage of that. I have small groups, and I have to do my own. In a lot of ways, I have to do my own arranging, or I have to take something and I have to alter it to fit my instrumentation, or maybe I've got that one kid's just hadn't quite figured it out. And so I need to make that part easy for that student while everybody else needs a challenge. And so I do a lot of that custom arranging, but it also means I can play pretty much whatever we want. We can have a good time, and they can come to me and say, hey, can we play this? Sure. Let me find a lead sheet on it, and I'll figure something out. Just give me some lead time. I'm not going to be arranging music every single night of the week. Yeah. We do a lot of stuff out of the book. It's just basic stuff that most bands do, most middle school bands do, especially. The high school, the instrumentation varies wildly from year to year. Mm-hmm. So every single year I have to kind of, first day of school, okay, what have I got to work with? What can we do here? It's a challenge. It can be frustrating at times, but they can play, and they're good kids, and they want to make music, and they want to enjoy themselves. So they understand you're going to have to work. You can't just pick it up and enjoy yourself. You got to figure it out, and you got to put in some work.
Yeah, man. Now you mentioned a little bit about custom arranging. I'm actually really curious, because ever since we got through COVID, our state has mentioned some like we were able to do some flex bands because the instrumentation was kind of off, because everything changed
Mhm.
after COVID and
Right.
programs got smaller, things like that. Um, did your state, in the state of Georgia, did you guys have any kind of, I don't know, adjustments, or was it just like, this is how it's going to stay, this is what it is?
They have added a lot of flex bands, flexible arrangements to the music list. I'm glad that they have, because there are a lot of schools that are just, it's a small school and they're never going to have fully instrumented. They're not going to have two bassoons. They're not going to have four French
Yeah.
horns. They're not going to have those things that a 2,000 student high school with a massive program. And I'm in here in Cobb County, which is a great band county. There are, I don't know, 15, 16 high schools, and there are probably a dozen of them that can compete on a national level with the marching band, and their concert bands are playing grade 6, and their second band's playing grade 5, and their third band's playing grade 5.
Wow.
They don't have the issues that most bands have, where, okay, I don't have any double reeds, or all of a sudden I have only 4 clarinets, so I got to figure, those flex band arrangements have become more popular. And I'm glad to see them. I do some of those, but a lot of what I do my own arrangement. We're going to play it in the gym, so I'm not really all that worried about copyright. We're not videotaping it, we're not selling it, we're not doing anything. So yeah, I like that. I like the creativity for a student to say, "Hey, here's this piece that I heard on the radio. Can we try something?" Okay, we'll try something.
Yeah,
I'll be glad to.
especially if you're willing to arrange it. I do actually. I teach band and guitar, and I find guitar I do it all the time. So
yeah,
just but band and guitar are two different beasts right there. So for sure.
yeah.
Super. Well, are there any other words of wisdom in terms of fundamentals, or what you're doing before we wrap up?
Well, I was very fortunate when I was a kid. I started playing flute when I was 7 years old.
Okay.
So by the time I got to 6th grade in beginning band, I was, head and shoulders above everybody. And I had a band director who said, "Would you like to play saxophone?" So I picked up the saxophone between 8th and 9th grade. Summer between 8th and 9th grade, I picked up saxophone. Been playing saxophone ever since. In high school, I had a band director who said, "You play flute, you play saxophone, you want to play the reed book in a Broadway show, you need to play clarinet." So I picked up clarinet. And then when I got to college and had to take all those, woodwind tech, brass, and as I mentioned, also march drum course. I had the brass background. So when I got to college and had to take all those courses about how to teach you how to play all those instruments, I'm like, well, I already know how to play those instruments. And they're like, "Oh, great." That's the most important skill I've needed teaching middle school, is that I can pick up, I got a table with my instruments on them. Trumpet players struggling. I turn around, pick up my trumpets. All right, put your hands in this, here's how I'm set. I can demonstrate it for them at the middle school level on every single instrument. I know that instrument. I understand that instrument. So when I'm writing for intermediate students, second year students, I know what they can do. I know what notes they know. I know what rhythms they know, and I can play it. And so I can sit there with them and say, "All right, trumpets, let's play your part. Here we go. We're going to play these 8 measures. I turn on metronome here. 1, 2, ready to go." And I'll play it with them. Play it with them a couple of times. And they see and hear, "Oh, okay, that's what it sounds like. That's what I want to sound like." Being introduced to all those instruments and being, I say, better than most middle school students on those instruments has allowed me to engage with them in ways that I think some teachers that never play can't.
Yeah.
That trumpet player who doesn't know how to make a sound on the flute. Well, if you don't know how to make a sound on a flute, how are your flute players going to know how to make a sound on a flute?
Exactly.
They're going to read a piece of paper in the front cover of their beginning band book. I mean, yeah, that's not good enough. Maybe you have the resources to bring a flutist in to get them started. Okay, great. I don't have those resources, so I've got to do it. Same thing with the percussionist. I was telling somebody the other day, I am the world's greatest percussionist for a flute player. My principal instrument is flute. But every single one of those rudiments, 40 whatever rudiments that are listed there on that basic red poster I have in my classroom, I can play them all. Kids say, "Okay, here we go, flam tap. All right, okay, here's flamadiddle. All right, here's triple ride McHugh. Got them. I can do them all. Slow to fast to slow. I'm not gonna be, there are high school students that can blow me away, sure, but for a middle school student, I'm a great percussionist. I can tune the timpani. I can teach them how to, correct mallet technique and correct cymbal technique and all that stuff. Learning how to do all those things allows me to know how to teach them how to do all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it started with teachers I had that said, "Hey, you're really good at flute. Would you like to play saxophone too?" I played saxophone in high school jazz band,
Okay.
and my freshman year, I'd been playing for a few months. I wasn't very good. My freshman year, 2 weeks before a concert, taking jazz band to solo ensemble, the second tenor broke his hand skateboarding.
Oh.
And so the band director came and pulled me out of homeroom and said, "Come on, you're getting a saxophone lesson right now. Let's go." And I spent that morning learning the parts. He hears the music. All right, here we go. And I'm looking at it like, whoa, okay. So, and I'm pretty sure I didn't sound very good 2 weeks later at performance evaluation, but it's kind of lit a spark. Oh, hey, okay, this is kind of fun. No, I'm a flute player. I can play Mozart for you. Sure. Well, this is totally different. And I really liked it. And I liked that it was different. I like Mozart. I like jazz. I like all those kinds of things because I've gotten to play them at a fairly high level. So that's really helped me as a teacher, being able to pick up that instrument and go, "All right, kid, let's try this. Here we go."
Yeah, you're just having that ability to model. That is awesome. That is awesome. In fact, that was one of the things when I was a young teacher that they said what my question was before we got to leave, and the primary professor said, ask a question, something that you ever always want to know, and that was one of the things is be able to model what you teach. It makes sense. So
Very important.
yeah. Well, Paul, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. How can people get in touch with you if they want to?
Well, I'm on Twitter or X or whatever they call it now, at Scanling. I'm the music director for the Atlanta Concert Band, so you can find atlantaconcertband.org. Find out what we're doing there. You can get in touch with me through that. That organization is also on Twitter at ATL Concert Band. I run that Twitter account as well. I'm on Facebook. You just search my name, Paul Scanling. There's a Paul Scanling in Canada. I don't know him, no relation, but you'll find me on that as well. I'm on LinkedIn sometimes. I'm not very good about LinkedIn, but yeah, do all that stuff. Yeah. So yeah, love to talk to people. And I just got back from our state Music Educators Association convention, and I love sitting there and chatting people about the intricate little details of the clarinet, or sixth graders to seventh graders to eighth graders, and how they've matured and how they don't mature, and all how you handle that stuff. Yeah, the war stories that we all have, those of us that have taught middle school for several years. So I love doing it. Love doing all that.
Well, awesome. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from the man here. Please feel free to touch base with them, and we'll also add that into the description a little later here. So, Paul, thanks so much, and everybody have a great day, safe day, and good luck in teaching. Have fun.